Thank you for listening to Soho Bites, the only podcast in the world, as far as we're aware, dedicated to talking about films set in Soho, the beating heart of bohemian cosmopolitan London. If you would like to support the show, you can do this in the form of a star rating or review at sohobitespodcast.com/review, or if you'd like to put a small amount of money where your mouth is, you can do that at sohobitespodcast.com/donate. Donations can be from as little as £3, which will buy, at London prices, about half a drink for one of our thirsty guests. You may hear some different URLs in the upcoming episode, but by far the easiest way is to follow one of those links. They are again sohobitespodcast.com/review and sohobitespodcast.com/donate. Thank you for your continued support and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to episode 5 of Soho Bites, a Soho on Screen podcast. My name is Jing-An Young. I'm a writer and researcher into the depiction of Soho, the beating heart of cosmopolitan bohemian London in British films. Back in the 1950s, there existed, for a short time at least, a football team called Soho Rangers. The manager of Soho Rangers was Albert Dimes, a well-known and feared gang member. The team was largely made up of local traps, including the great train robber Tommy Wisby, Mad Frankie Frazier, and Eddie Richardson. We're not sure how many games they played, but it would have been a brave team who went up against Soho Rangers and played to win. The association of Soho with the world of sport is not one that's made very often, so all the more reason to bring you this special sport-themed episode of Soho Bites. First up, we spent an afternoon at a cricket match. It wasn't exactly in Soho, in fact it was 47 miles from Wardour Street, but there's a very strong Soho connection. Our film chat this week is a bit closer to home, recorded live on stage at the Regent Street Cinema as part of the Soho Agogo Film Festival. Stick around to the second half of the show to hear friends Aidan McManus and Melanie Williams chat to producer Dom about Rattle of a Simple Man. Apart from a couple of ping-pong tables in Soho Square, not much live sport takes place in Soho. This is why Soho's very own cricket team, the Soho Cricket Collective, plays all of its matches as a visiting team at other people's grounds. The collective has been running as a team for over a decade, and is made up of keen amateur cricketers drawn mostly from the film and media industry that have their homes here. A love of the game is pretty much the only requirement to bag a place on Soho's only cricket team, and as long as you know which end of the bat to hold and are an all-round good egg, you might be in with a chance. One August day, producer Dom ventured out of London and headed deep into the English countryside and met up with a couple of the cheery band of comrades from the Soho Cricket Collective.
A breeze in the trees, the thwack of willow on leather, gentle applause, and a country fair in the background. These are not the sounds of Soho. These are the sounds of the countryside. These are the sounds of cricket.
I know of no game more fitting than the age-old game of cricket. It has honour, it has character, and is British.
We've stepped out of Soho for today, and we've stepped out of London, if you can imagine such a thing. And we've come down to a village called Firle in Sussex, just outside Lewes, and we're here to follow the exploits of the Soho Cricket Collective.
I'm Comrade Commissar Premier Yuri, otherwise known as Yuri Padiz, and also known by my real name, which is Phil. 10 years ago, I worked in Soho, lived in Soho, had a post-production and film production company in Soho. Get that, Mildred? Mildred. Sorry, it's a busy office. And one of my suppliers said, do you play cricket? Why don't you raise a team and we'll play you? And this was a company called Quantel, this is 10 years ago. So we hurriedly got together a collection of media types who were vaguely interested in cricket and got a team together. And then year on year we've built and developed and changed.
So keep a straight bat at all times.
The interesting thing I should talk about is the collective. Because it had the word collective in it, I thought it sounded Soviet. And so then the whole Soviet theme kind of took off. I'm holding out our club logo, which is a cricket ball, 3 stumps in the form of a sickle. And that's our sort of Soviet angle.
Subversive, some might say.
Certainly the way we bowl. The batting is quite subversive. I think, do you know what I haven't seen from Dan? I'm sat next to Dan, who's our most marvellous... what are you?
Hello, I'm a commissar
That's it.
to keep within the Soviet theme. I'm Dan March, a.k.a. Soldier, a.k.a. Hatter, Hatsky. Anything with a kind of Russian-sounding word I'll respond to normally in the field. And I am a leg spin bowler and part-time batsman. Very part-time, because I'm not out there for long enough to be full-time. And I've been with the team, I think this is my 8th season. I think I missed the first season. I'd been in a film that Phil had made when he was at film school. That's how far back we go. Yes. And then we met up again in Soho, and I was in the office. I was doing some voiceovers for you and various other things. And you said, you like cricket, don't you? And I went, I love cricket. He said, well, I have this team, the Soho Cricket Collective. You're often in Soho. That counts. Would you like to join?
But that's how the collective was formed. It was sort of a collection. It used to be a collection of people who are all exclusively living or working in Soho. And now, as needs must, and we all get old and have children, you sort of push out towards the outskirts of London, and that's where I am now.
How does it work then? You just have a list of email addresses, say who fancies the game, and pitch up?
Yes, we have a very active Facebook group and a WhatsApp group, and that sort of tends to keep us all together. We have the blog. Everyone knows about the blog.
And there's a core membership as well. We all pay our membership fees, well, most of us, of which half goes to charity, which is, very nice. And we become friends as well. I think that's the joyous thing, that it's been friends and friends of friends who've kind of joined, but we've all bonded and become a really strong group and a unit that often go out, and we have annual cricket drinks and an awards ceremony.
The awards.
I've seen that on the website actually,
Yes.
or I think it was Facebook. I saw an awards ceremony.
So you saw the trophy?
The trophy. Now, the story of the trophy is I was...
You tell it, Dan. Why don't you?
I was helping a friend of mine move, and in his back garden of this house, he bought this house from an elderly Russian lady, and in the back garden, tossed on the trash, was this old beaten metal object. I thought, what's that? And it was a giant samovar urn, right? And he said, oh, I'm going to get rid of that. I went, can I have it? Can I have it? I think I know a good home for that. And I brought it into you and I said, what do you think you can do with that?
I can stick it onto something.
We got it all polished up. You got it all polished and shiny, and stuck it on a stand, and it's now our annual massive, probably the biggest trophy in sport now.
And who do you award it to? You a player within the team, or,
Yes,
or
each
not
year.
not another club?
It goes to the comrade's comrade. So the paid up comrades of the year vote for their favourite comrade of the year. So
Not
it's
necessarily
nothing
on sporting
Yeah,
ability, it's not
absolutely.
on wickets taken or runs scored, because those are different separate awards. This is all on the comrade's comrade. Who's been the most comradely, who's helped the most, who's been the epitome of a team-spirited, collective, Russian, joyous, cricketing, wonderful human being.
Are you glad you started this?
This is because I did a little bit of sniffing around on the website and the Facebook group and Twitter and everything. I hadn't picked up any of the subversive communist stuff, only the name. So it seems to be quite a thing.
We're a brand of communists who used to all have their own businesses and large cars and fast houses and large cars. Do I mean that?
As an actor, I'm not part of that group.
Do you have a fast house?
Larger than fast
No, very
cars.
slow. Very slow. Slow. I'm munching away on match tea, by the way. That's why I'm
Yes.
slightly...
It looks delicious, the match
It
tea.
is. I've just had a lovely cheese and pickle. A very underrated sandwich, the cheese and pickle. Match tea, it's cricket. We're playing a match here down in
Did
beautiful
they have
Firle.
an egg salad sandwich?
They did. I avoided that.
Oh, I know. I love egg
backing
salad sandwich. You know, in cricket tea, egg salad sandwich is everything.
Can we talk about this match in particular?
It's an annual fixture. We're at the lovely Firle, nestling beneath the South Downs on what would have been a lovely August day, which is sort of very windy and overcast.
And the team are called the Exiles, or
That's
something?
right. They're Brighton exiles, people who have left London.
They too were in London. Dave Hooper, in particular, who's the founder of the Exiles, he was a London sort. He's a film distributor, I believe.
I'm
Well,
now,
that was
I'm now
nothing
eating
like
a
the
small
original.
pork pie, just to let you know, which is also equally delicious.
Fill your mouth with pork, Dan.
So
please
this match is tantalisingly poised at the halfway mark. A 35 over a side game. They've scored 160 runs. I took 2 wickets. I don't like to blow my own trumpet. Only 4 overs and 2 wickets. That's not bad, is it? Keeping my wicket-taking matches going this season, I've had... Anyway, I won't go on. 3 for 33, 3 for 37, 1 for 37. Anyway, no, I won't go on. But I've had a good season so far. I'm not touting for awards at the end, but... no. And Phil bowled really well as well. He took a beautiful wicket, didn't you? Bowled a beautiful wicket.
So 160, that's a reasonably tough target, isn't it, for 35 overs? It was looking quite good for you until that tall, rangy fellow at the end hit a few fours.
Yes.
He was.
Well, they always going to save something for the back end. We always have something up the back end, don't we, Dan?
Well, that's collectively.
Good Lord, are you stuck for words?
I'm stuck for pork pie.
Sorry. Next year is our 10th anniversary year, so I shall be stepping down as Premier. And a new.
Will you be laid out in a mausoleum for about 9 years?
I should probably fall over and be laid out somewhere or other.
Thousands of us will be queuing up, just putting old cricket balls on them.
I'd like your old balls all over me. That would be lovely.
This? Oh, I say now, that's not cricket. It has a blatant air of graft.
We have a magnificent comrade who passed away a few years back, and
one of the founder members.
Founder member, indeed. The trophy is actually named the Kobramovich Comrade Award.
Tim Cobra Graham.
Yes,
who was a wonderful friend and wonderful player, and just an all-round, just a most incredible man. And sadly, a few years ago, we were playing a match, and he passed away playing cricket.
During the game?
During the game, I was there. It's how he would have wanted to go, really. Yeah. He loved cricket, and he loved the team, and so we dedicate that trophy to him. And
you may have witnessed one of Dan's bowls. I don't know if you did. And as he gave the hand gesture, we all hissed.
I raised my hand in the air, and I sort of cupping the ball, and which was his distinctive style. And then everyone hissed in the memory of the Cobra. So I'll always deliver one ball like that every match. And
I'll mock it up though for the.
Yeah, we can hiss later, can't we?
Yes,
we could do that.
Yeah.
All hail her great dominions here. All hail her sporting blood.
The members of the team, it seems to be mature gentlemen.
Well, 24 to 65.
I think Jonty is now 65.
Yeah.
We even have some juniors very occasionally, not so much recently. We're happy to though. We're happy to have women play.
But we've had women play in the past.
And all in film, media, those kind of, or is it all vary a bit now?
That was definitely the intention, and we stick to it as best we can. Some people have drived through Soho, which counts. Some people
or driven even.
Yeah, or even if they've heard the word Soho, they will have, if they can acknowledge it.
If they can spell it, if they can say it.
Or even
Soho!
Or if they can smell London sometimes, that qualifies. But we still have, I think there's a good old media influence in it still.
Yeah.
And,
there's still a good core, a good meaty core of the Soho Collective, which is involved in the media. And we're happy. We will accept everyone.
Yeah, we are totally open. And especially if you've got some cricketing skill, but you know what? That's probably towards the bottom of membership requirements.
Huge thanks to Dan March and Phil Richardson for sharing their match tea with producer Dom down in Sussex. And they mean what they say. They really are open to welcoming new members to the collective. If you fancy a game of cricket and would like to get involved with the Soho Cricket Collective, you'll find their contact details at the end of the show and in this episode's show notes.
Hello, this is what's known as a mid-roll ad. It's one of those annoying interruptions that's inserted retrospectively at just the wrong point. And the reason for it is that Soho Bites takes up hours of time every month, and I'm hoping you might be able to support the show. There are 2 ways you can do this. One is for free, and it's to leave the show a star rating or kind review. You can do that at sohobitespodcast.com/review. Or if you'd like to assist financially to help cover our costs, you can do that at sohobitespodcast.com/donate. Thank you very much. Apologies for the interruption, and back to the episode.
In October, we were very pleased to be involved in the Soho Agogo Film Festival, a 3-day event showcasing fascinating Soho films and Q&As at the Regent Street Cinema in London. Among the highlights was the films we featured in our last episode, Secrets of a Windmill Girl, which was shown on the Saturday night, and followed by a Q&A with our guest from that same episode, Dr. Adrian Smith. On the Friday, I hosted a Q&A after the screening of The Shakedown, And on the final day of the festival, producer Dom spoke to 2 guests about Rattle of a Simple Man. This was the last film to be directed by the UK's most prolific female director, Muriel Box. She was 1/3 of the triumvirate of Boxers. Her husband, Sidney, was a screenwriter and producer, and together they forged a formidable 20-year professional partnership. Muriel's sister-in-law, Betty Box, was another powerful producer in her own right, whose unerring eye for a commercial hit earned her the nickname Betty Box Office. Rattle of a Simple Man is set over the course of one evening on FA Cup final day. After the match, a group of Mancunian football fans head off into Soho for a night of drinking. The clock is ticking though, because their coach to Manchester leaves at midnight. Succumbing to peer pressure, one member of the group, shy and naive Percy Winthrop, played by Harry H. Corbett, accepts a bet and as a result ends up in the flat of a working girl. It becomes a life-changing few hours for him and not necessarily for reasons you might expect.
Percy Winthrop, the oddball, the simple man, mother's boy, nobody's Romeo. Trapped by the boys, a bet and a woman.
I told you she were a lady. You can't be coarse with girls like that. You think you could do better? I'd have to have my brains tested if I couldn't. You want to bet? Go on, Perce. You're on? Right, Joan.
The stage play of the same name upon which the film was based starred Edward Woodward and Sheila Hancock and was a big hit. Sidney Box then secured the rights for the film at a record sum of £50,000, and it was adapted for the screen by the original writer Charles Dyer. On stage, it was a two-hand and was set almost entirely in one location, but the movie expands the list of players and locations. We meet Percy's gang of rowdy but harmless football mates in various pubs and clubs in Soho and Victoria, a handful of beatniks and bohemians who populate the Camden house of working girl Seren's flat, and Seren even leaves Camden and visits her family, from whom she is partially estranged. The film is difficult to categorise and wasn't a large success upon release, although Sidney did eventually recoup his outlay by the end of the 1960s. Is it one of those films that's underappreciated in its day but holds more appeal with the passing of time? And did the audience at the Regent Street Cinema appreciate it? After the screening of Rattle of a Simple Man, producer Dom chatted on stage with Dr. Melanie Williams from the University of East Anglia, who is a specialist in post-war British cinema, and with the curator of the Soho Go-Go season and the owner of this first voice, Aidan McManus.
So we've got Melanie Williams with us and Dom DeLarge, who are going to, from Soho Bites film podcast. You're the one who introduced me to this film.
I am, aren't I? Yeah.
Yeah.
I interviewed Aidan for the podcast, and there was this one, Windmill Girl, a couple more, wasn't there?
And Cover Girl Killer, where Harry H. Corbett is a crazed cover girl killer. Is, you know, explains the title.
Yeah.
You put me on to quite a few of these films, so this is why we're showing this today. So. Why do you like this film so much?
Just before we start, I just need to do a disclaimer. It's been recorded for the Soho Bites podcast. So if you don't want to be on the podcast and recorded, don't speak. So that's me legally covered now. Sorry, why do I like the film? It's not the greatest film of all time. I watched it recently and liked it more than I thought I did. You know what I mean? I too am a lonely northerner adrift in the big city. It's a period piece. It's kind of we were talking outside in the bar. Melanie's got lots of information about the trouble they had with the BBFC, and it's on that cusp of a time where, what's his name, John Trevelyan. He was trying to open up and try and allow films to be a little bit more. If it was art, you get away with more stuff. But on this film, it seemed to be a bit stricter. Lots of the stuff that he wanted taken out was the sort of stuff that would have been allowed in other films if it was more artistic.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at the BBFC reports, it seems to reveal more about the BBFC reviewers than it does the film, because there's lots of kind of relish about we mustn't see the whip that she dances with used too salaciously, and when there mustn't be any suggestion that she's taken her knickers off, and don't do close-ups on her leather boots, and don't show her wearing suspenders. And in the end, the report itself ends up being much more salacious than the film ever had any intention to be. I think that idea of it being like a film that's on the cusp, really, it's sort of around the same time as those British New Wave films. So in the wake of
64.
Room at the Top's
64.
come in, and you've had things like Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, but interestingly, it's sort of just ahead of the trend for swinging London.
Right.
So that thing of people, after Billy Liar and Tom Courtenay deciding not to come down from the north to London, then you get lots of films where people do make the journey south.
But it does it looks very 50s. And then you got the scene, the party downstairs, some of the girls got sort of ready, steady, go haircuts, and you know what I mean? So it is sort of just where came out 64, so it's probably made 63. So that's sort of like Sammy Lee as well. Sammy Lee looks really 50s. So this is just when...
It's on that sort of
where it's sort of...
edge.
But you're talking about them complaining about suspenders and that. Surely Espresso Bongo, the scenes in that.
Yeah,
that had already been done.
Yeah, that was like 4 or 5 years before.
Yeah. So that had already been shown on the screen. So why were they so worried about this? Because it was about prostitution and...
There's definitely some anxiety about that. And often the BBFC rulings can be quite inconsistent, so some films will get away with more than others. And it's interesting as well, Diane Cilento had just been Oscar nominated for her appearance in Tom Jones.
Right,
And Tom Jones gets away with a lot more in terms of being a sort of sex comedy, because it is a period drama as well, so it can kind of, get away with it because it's a literary adaptation.
Yeah, right.
And it's really interesting that at the beginning of this film, when they're walking through Soho, you see
Tom Jones,
playing, and that's
yeah.
the film she's in.
Well, she was sort of known as well as being a bit of a feminist, and there's a lot of themes in that, like like her dad. You find out her dad's molested her, and him judging her morally when he's a bit suspect as well. So there's a lot of that in it as well, which at the time probably wasn't discussed that much.
No, I think it's interesting. Diane Cilento had worked a couple of times before with the director, Muriel Box, who herself was a kind of staunch feminist.
Yeah.
So I think some of those themes are kind of coming through via Muriel Box's kind of particular set of interests, even back when she's making films like Good Time Girl in the 40s.
Yeah, that's a good film. I like that as well.
They're like delinquents, but we understand why these young women
it's just
behave
this
the way they do.
Yeah, and it's sort of showing a prostitute to be human, which before in films they were sort of, just portrayed one way. They were just one-dimensional. Whereas this is sort of a three-dimensional person, with family, and she's had a hard life and she's created this fantasy world for herself, which he has as well. But it's acceptable for him, but it's not for her.
Yeah, one of the BBFC stipulations was that it should be made clear that there should be no suggestions of actual incest in the family. So between her and the brothers, and it had to be made clear that the father is her stepfather.
Right.
But I didn't pick that up.
No, I don't think
wasn't
it
aware
is clear
of that.
in the film.
But apparently...
So they're saying, your proper dad wouldn't do
that's
it.
bad.
Yeah.
But it's not as
bad. If it's
bad.
a stepfather, it's not as bad.
It's all right,
there we go. And at the same time, Harry H. Corbett was in Steptoe.
Yeah.
He was doing Steptoe at the same time.
He was very famous. He was instantly famous. And there's this idea that Harry H. Corbett was... this kind of this tragic guy who wanted a career on stage but couldn't have one. He was just Steptoe because he'd been typecast by Steptoe. And actually, I don't think it's quite like that. I think he had been a very well-known actor, and he was called the actor's actor. And he's very well regarded. And it wasn't so much that people thought that he couldn't play anything but Steptoe. It was that he became so massively famous straight away, he couldn't then go back to the stage because he'd be. Not the sort of... He was working with Joan Littlewood, sorry.
Yeah.
And that kind of work. You can't do that once you've been a mega famous star, He'd have to go do West End, and which wasn't the work he was interested in.
Yeah, he was in things like Sparrows Can't Sing and stuff like that. And but he just got typecast, basically, as Steptoe.
And the Bar G, which is...
His films are interesting because there's someone trying to, break away from type or do things that are not... obviously like Steptoe, but I think in this film he's still playing someone who's a bit of a loser, a bit of someone who's trapped by their home environment. So there's, even though they're different characters in a way, there is that kind of connection.
Steptoe again, isn't it? Yeah, it's instead of the dad, it's the mum this time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Thora Hird.
Yeah.
Can't get away.
Yeah, Thora Hird could be the female Wilfred Bramble, really, couldn't she? You know what I mean?
There's a scene, I don't know if you noticed, you know when they first go back to the house, and he's making his way up the stairs, and there's all these kind of oddballs in that London.
Yeah.
There's an old fella on the top of the stairs sitting down crying. Yeah. Is that Wilfred Bramble?
Is it?
I don't know.
No, I don't know.
Did anybody? Because I watched it again today and I thought, really? And he's not in the credits. His face is partially covered as well by a hat.
Yeah, it's possible.
Was he not off being busy with the Beatles at that point?
Oh, he could have been, yeah.
Maybe
that was 64. So that was summer 64 was Hard Day's Night. So probably not. This is probably pre Hard Day's Night. Harry H. Corbett sort of got stuck, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean he did Carry On Screaming. That's a great film.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know what he didn't do much. I absolutely love Steptoe and Son. I think it's a work of genius.
Yeah.
And where'd you go after that, you know?
He must have made a few quid, though, because when I was a kid, we used to hang around outside Paul McCartney's house. He lived over the road in the same street as Paul McCartney. And these houses, if you go up there now, they're not, they're not council. So he must have made a few quid.
Well, you were saying some interesting things earlier on about his accent. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His Manchester accent.
When I first saw the film, I wasn't aware that Harry H. Corbett was a Mancunian.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that is the worst Manchester accent I've ever heard in my life.
You have quite a nice figure. Quite nice hair, too.
I'm glad you like it.
Yes. Well, thanks for the glass of water and the aspirin. It was very nice of you. As a matter of fact, I think you must be a very nice person.
Underneath it all?
Yes. No, I really mean that. I've never talked with anyone as interesting as you. You see, you don't often meet girls who are original. You certainly are. I don't think I've ever had such an interesting night. Never.
And it's a kind of this generalised northern thing that they do in Corrie sometimes, a little bit of Hull, a little bit of Liverpool, a little bit of Yorkshire.
Yeah.
But then I discovered that he actually was brought up in Manchester.
On a council estate as well, apparently.
Yeah, a couple of council estates. And I read this quote, this is from his, the biography written of him by his daughter. And he says, there are varying accents around Manchester. There isn't a Manchester accent. I tried to get this certain accent which comes from a certain area, which is emasculated, back in the throat, almost a feminine type of accent, which would have suited Percy. Now I see from a dialect point of view, I ought to have kept it away from that, but I failed miserably. So he was very unhappy with his performance and very unhappy with his accent.
So he's the Dick Van Dyke of Manchester.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And but Dick Van Dyke had an excuse. He was not from London, you know. I don't know what he was doing, but the accent is appalling.
What about Michael Medwin's?
Better.
Really?
Actually, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Any Mancunians? Yeah. Better accent than them.
Is that we're getting that, yeah? Yeah, definitely. Who's voting for Michael Medwin? There's two of you then, yeah? So if you're at Manchester, I'm going to go with you, you know, definitely, man. Yeah.
It's interesting as well that Charles Dyer, who writes the play, and when they're marketing the film, it's very much a film based on a big hit play. So it's a big success. Charles Dyer is in the film as well, appears as one of Percy's...
He's chalky.
His squad. One of the chums. So
is that the drunk one? Is that him? He wrote the play?
He wrote the play.
He wrote the play as well.
Who was in the play originally then?
Edward Woodward and Sheila Hancock.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah.
You saw it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sydney Box paid 50 grand for the rights, which is a large amount of money. So Charles Dyer, Chalky, he must have made more. He must have been
50 grand was a lot of money in those days as well, wasn't it? You could have bought about 10 houses. Yeah, but I mean, a house was like 1,500 quid or 2 grand in those days. You know what I mean? You could be like Robbie Fowler.
But he still carried on, as well as writing other plays. He writes another play called Staircase, which is about a gay couple, and that's made into a film with Rex Harrison and Richard Burton a couple of years later on. But he's also still acting. If anyone's seen The Knack and How to Get It, there's a scene at the beginning where Rita Tushingham's waiting to get her picture taken in a photo booth, and there's a couple doing something a bit salacious in the photo booth while she's waiting.
60s.
And Charles Dyer is the guy in that couple. So he's still appearing in films as well as writing plays, and appearing on television as well as an actor.
And Muriel Box, I think that was her last film as well, wasn't it? And she started writing after this because...
Well, she's writing before, wasn't she? That's what she was.
She didn't do any films because she just wasn't getting any work. And do you think that's because she had these sort of feminist themes, which people, you know, like you said, it seems like the censors were being over picky about this when they'd let stuff like this slide before. Maybe it's because it's about a brass and taking on a naive northerner, or they didn't want to promote that or something. But do you think there was anything to do with the feminist angle as well?
We were sort of talking about Muriel Box's career and why it stops when it does, and why this is her last film. And it's a sort of mixture of things, really. Her relationship with Sydney Box breaks down, and Sydney Box as a producer had been really provided a space for her to be a director when mostly in the industry there was great antipathy towards women directing. They weren't seen as kind of suitable to direct. So there were very few women able to direct films, and Muriel Box is given that space partly because of kind of Sydney's largesse, really. Right, so that relationship breaks up, and I think also things are changing in the film industry, also in the television industry, and so her interests seem to be elsewhere. So she sets up a kind of feminist press, becomes much more interested in publishing
house,
and kind of political activity more.
All right, we got any questions? Anyone got any questions? Come on, Tony.
Wait for the mic so we get it on the podcast. That's
suggested I should discuss this in the bar afterwards, but I'll throw it at you.
Go on.
And it concerns the casting. I've often thought that pre-Room at the Top and its successors, casting of prostitutes, the word prostitute in this is never used, was unnecessarily, I think the word is prurient, and that to cast an English girl would not be considered in this era appropriate, because the first British film to actually deal with prostitutes and called them that was not Good Time Girl, which interestingly is of course directed by Muriel Box, but a film called The Flesh is Weak, in which specifically the leading prostitute is played by Milli Vitale, an Italian girl. And I can't think of, and perhaps you can, the first time an English actress played a fictional prostitute on the British screen. They were all
There's
played.
a challenge for you.
Waterloo Bridge.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sylvia Sims in...
But that, of course, was a Hollywood picture, and the one before was a Hollywood picture. You're talking Betty Davis and Vivian Leigh, and they're not British films.
Sylvia Sims, 10 times over.
Who, of course, is Jewish, and which brings me to Espresso Bongo, which has an all-Jewish cast.
Right.
They are still the outsiders.
Well, English girls wouldn't do that, of course.
Well, that's where I'm going with this. I mean, is this the last film to cast a person with a foreign name, effectively a foreigner, as a hooker on the wrong side of the tracks?
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's something that only occurred to me while watching this.
In Espresso Bongo, it doesn't... I'm going to get my films mixed up. Does Hermione Baddeley play a prostitute in...
Yeah, but it's not a leading role. It's a very small walk-on, nothing part.
There's Passport to Shame, which has Diana Dawes playing.
Odile Versois, I would point out, was the lead in that, and again, a foreign lady.
I think that's right.
It's not seemly for an Anglican Christian English girl to play a hooker.
Well, I'm reminded of that line that Oliver Reed says in Castaway, "What's wrong with a good old-fashioned English tart?" You know, you don't really get that in the films. I think
in
you're
film
right.
terms, Castaway is 150 years after this.
But that idea that, you know, sex is foreign and foreignness is sexy.
In English films only, though.
Strongly associated.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Interestingly, Jean Kent was really keen to play the role that Simone Signoret ended up playing in Room at the Top. And of course, in the original novel by John Brain, the character is not French. She's English, but we get some insignia imported, and I think it's not really until we get into the swinging 60s that you start to be a British woman who's allowed to be kind of sexualised in quite the same way. Diana Dawes, I think, is a separate case, as she always is.
Does anyone else got any questions?
It's really interesting about the sort of the idea of maleness. You know, there they were all downing these pints and then talking about, you know, the women, like, you know, the guy who gets robbed. I mean, he really got his comeuppance, didn't he? I mean, that was fantastic. But in a way, it was sort of innocent as well, you know? And also the scenes in the pub. It was mostly male.
Mm.
There were hardly any women in the pub.
They had the days.
Yeah, that's probably a public bar then, wasn't it?
I suppose it's a film that's interesting on sort of male bravado. I mean, that idea of, you know, bragging about this and betting about that, and then actually when this person is in a different situation, their complete insecurity and their novice virginal status is revealed. And it's all about that character's kind of like insecurities really being unravelled as the film goes on.
Diane Cilento was fantastic when she was saying how it was going to turn out, how he was going to be bragging, you know, when he got back to his mates, you know.
Yeah.
That was fantastic, I thought.
Although he didn't, of course. He gave him the motorbike.
No, but you knew he was going to do that as well. You know, there ain't any bragging in him, is there?
No.
Yeah, if anything, he's pretty honest. You know, he might be a bit sort of think, oh, he's a bit of a drip or whatever, but he is honest. And out of all the people in that film, he's the honest one. Everyone else is, even Diane Cilento's fannying to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? All of them are. Anyone else? No? All right, I think that's it then. Have you got anything else to add, you two?
I don't think so, no.
No? So, well, thanks for coming. I like that film. It's a good film, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a lot worse. It explores...
It's a 7.
Huh?
It's a 7. It's a 6 or a 7.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah. You know, and some of the things it explores are interesting, which is still relevant. I'm sure men are still talking bollocks about women they've pulled to this day.
I'm sure that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. And I'm sure no English rose would ever turn to prostitution, whatever happened. You know what I mean? All right, look, thank you. Thanks for coming. Yak's got some books to sell in the foyer. We've got Harrison Marks, and go chat to Yak. Anyway, right, thank you. Cheers.
That was Melanie Williams and Ada McManus chatting to our producer Dom. They were recorded live on stage at the Regent Street Cinema. Thanks very much to both of them for taking part. If you'd like to find out more about Melanie's research into British film, please do follow her at BritFilmMelanie. Aidan also has his fingers in many pies as presenter, curator and tour guide, and tweets at McManus_Aidan. Our many thanks to the Regent Street Cinema for hosting us, particularly for the technical support from Dave and Edwin, and to Mike Regard, who gave up his Sunday evening in tooting to press buttons. And if you'd like to find out more about the Soho Cricket Collective, head to their website, sohocricketcollective.com, and you can also find them on Twitter at Soho Cricket Call. Do you have a favourite Soho film? We'd love to hear from you if there's one you'd like featured on the podcast. You can email your suggestions at sohobitespodcast@gmail.com, or tweet us at BitesSoho. You can also subscribe to us whenever you find your podcast for more Soho and film-related chat every couple of weeks. It's been a great pleasure to relaunch the Soho Bites podcast with producer Dom. But as a writer and researcher with numerous hats, I'll be taking a hiatus from this podcast. But if you'd like to keep updated with my Soho film research, do follow me at Soho On Screen on Twitter, and my next project, which explores the greatest cities in cinema, can be found at citiesincinema.co.uk. From me, Jing An Young, and my producer Dom DeLaghi, bye for now.